Today we're going to be looking at what is Japanese tea, what makes it unique, and how can you be making sure to be finding the most beautiful Japanese teas out there. Thank you for watching. Hi tea friends, this is Elsa from Nannuoshan, where we share in the pleasure of drinking and discovering genuine farm teas. If you're new to our channel, welcome. This is a good place for you to expand your tea knowledge and your brewing skills. So if it's your first time doing so, please make sure to click subscribe so you can follow along. And if you like what you're seeing, then please give us a thumbs up. So this year, Nannuoshan is really excited because we're expanding our Japanese tea section by doing a particular focus on cultivars. So cultivars are cultivated varieties, which are selected by farmers for any number of reasons. It could be because they have a particular resilience. It could be because they sprout a couple of days later than the other cultivar that the farmer is harvesting, so giving them a chance to harvest one and then the other. Or it can be because different cultivars have different aroma and flavor profiles. And so we're thrilled here at Nannuoshan to be able to bring to you these cultivars, which aren't just Yabukita, which is the most utilized Japanese sencha cultivar, but a whole range of others which will enable you to taste these subtle teas. So Japanese teas is actually where my personal love story with tea began. So it's really exciting for me that we've decided to do this series of videos with you. As a little bit of background about me, so when I started working in the tea industry, I was like probably many of you guys out there. I had read different books, I had watched a lot of videos, but there were certain things about the way in which tea is processed which were still a bit, shall we say, vague for me. And so I had this incredible opportunity to go spend 3 months on a tea farm in Kyoto Prefecture in Wazuka in Japan, which is a tiny tea and rice farming community where I think it's about 3,000 people, and tea has been grown there for more than 800 years. It's just been handed down from generation to generation. And really everywhere that you look is tea fields. It's absolutely beautiful. And so I did this for 3 months, learned a lot about Japanese tea harvesting and production. And a year later, I was lucky, I went back to Japan to do a training with the Japan Tea Export Council. And so this was 2 weeks where they brought tea professionals from all over the world, and with the Chamber of Commerce from Shizuoka and Kagoshima, which are 2 of the biggest tea producing regions of Japan for different reasons. So Shizuoka is known for these incredibly high quality Japanese teas, and Kagoshima, which has a much flatter topography and therefore is able to do some more mass production of tea. So we visited all of these different farms and farmers and factories, some auction houses, some wholesalers, a lot of tea shops. And so both of those experiences have really contributed to making Japanese tea just have this most special place in my heart. I begin as many days as possible drinking my Japanese tea, and when it's springtime in Japan, which is when the most beautiful Japanese teas are being harvested, I just feel this fabulous thrill. So we're excited to share some of this with you guys. So for those of you who are completely brand new to Japanese teas, what are they? What are they known for? What is their flavor profile? So Japanese teas, for the most part, are known for having this incredibly green, grassy, freshly cut grass, vegetal, almost seaweed-like flavor profile. Japan is a country which is made up of thousands of islands, I think more than 6,000, maybe almost 7,000. And at one point, someone said to me that, when you're in Japan, you're never far from the water, and you're also never far from this lush greenery. And so actually Japanese teas taste like the geography of Japan. You can taste those bodies of water nearby. You can taste those fields of green. And I thought that that was both an incredibly poetic way to put it, but also incredibly accurate. So I think of that often. You have these hints of the ocean in your Japanese tea, but this freshly cut grass taste, which is completely unlike what you find when you're drinking Chinese green teas. So, and the other thing which is really an indicator of Japanese green teas is they're known for having these slender needle-like shapes. So one needle represents one leaf. And, when we're talking about quality, so for the most part, to find a high-quality Japanese green tea, you're looking for something which looks like a pine green needle. And if it's just a pile of those already, when you encounter that, very slender, very bright green, very fragrant, then you know that you're in luck, that you found a beautiful Japanese green tea. So there are, I think a lot of us, our tea journey goes through probably at the beginning more flavored green teas. And so at some point, or even now if you have in your cupboard some flavored green teas, it's very likely that they were produced in the Japanese style, but probably in China. And when you look at those leaves, and actually we'll show you a photo of the two right now so you can compare. So the first is this bright, vivid green, very slender needle-like shapes. And then the second are these sort of duller green, coarser, flatter, thicker leaves. You can tell that they're inspired by the same thing, but there's also a major quality difference. So when we think of these two flavor profiles between Chinese green teas and Japanese green teas, which have really nothing to do with each other, so Chinese green teas have more these hay-like notes, these maybe more nutty flavors, whereas when you're drinking Japanese teas, you feel like you're drinking a vegetable. You feel like you're in a field of freshly cut grass. What is the primary reason for this difference between the two? So maybe you're guessing terroir, in which case you're right. Maybe you're guessing cultivation technique, absolutely. Maybe you're guessing, the handed down ancestral knowledge of how these teas are made, absolutely. You guys are right. But if we have to isolate really one single factor which is responsible for this difference between the two green teas, it's the kill green. So some of you might already know what that is from having watched some of our previous videos, but for those of you who are brand new to this term, the kill green is the step in tea processing which is responsible for maintaining the greenery of the leaves. So tea leaves, as soon as they're harvested, they begin to oxidize. So what is oxidation? Oxidation is something which we've all encountered in non-tea related moments. For example, if you were eating an apple or a banana or cutting an avocado and you had to step away from it, you came back 30 minutes later and it started to turn a little brown. So this is a totally naturally occurring process which happens in tea leaves once they're harvested. And it's something which is encouraged in black tea and which we want to stop right away in green tea so that the leaves maintain their green color. And the way that this is done is by applying heat to the leaves. And this heat deactivates the enzyme which is responsible for the oxidation. But so before we get to that, I want to take a further step back because when we're thinking about these differences between Chinese green teas and Japanese green teas, there's also some major differences in the cultivation of these teas. So in China, an indicator of quality is teas which are harvested by hand. So every single Chinese green tea that nannuoshan supplies for you has, without a doubt, we promise to you, been harvested by hand. If you've watched our videos or read some of our blogs, you've seen Gabriele showing you these tea trees which are meters tall, which tea farmers have to climb into to harvest by hand. These trees are very, some of them can be very old. So this is absolutely magnificent. But in Japan, the situation is actually completely different. So manual labor in Japan is incredibly expensive, and it's incredibly hard to come by. And so as a result, tea being harvested by hand is not at all an indicator of quality with Japanese green teas. I mean, don't get me wrong, if you encounter a Japanese green tea that was hand harvested, then you know that you've landed on something which is incredibly rare and incredibly high quality. And actually at nannuoshan this year, we're thrilled to be offering you a very special hand harvested, hand plucked Japanese green tea. It's absolutely magnificent, but this is not the norm with Japanese green tea. So if you're stepping into a shop and you're looking for a high quality Japanese green tea, listen, if you have a lot of money to spend and you're looking to splurge, and you're in a specialty Japanese tea shop that does offer hand harvested green teas, by all means get it. But this isn't the highest, or this isn't the only indicator of quality in Japan, because the tea fields, the tea industry has prepared itself to handle, to deal with this lack of manpower. So the way tea fields are organized in Japan is in these elegant, very carefully manicured, almost sort of cornrows. So the teas are kept at about waist height, and we'll show you some photos so that you can see exactly what I mean. But then these tea rows, these tea bushes, are harvested not by hand, but by a machine that's maneuvered by a duo of farmers. So often it's a husband-wife team, but not always. And what happens is, so for example, if you and I were to be harvesting a row of tea trees together, we would stand on opposite sides of this row, and we would both hold a machine. Now, mind you, when we're talking about machines in tea production, they've all been created to be replicating exactly what man used to do, right? It's just a way to try to optimize situation or lack of manpower. So these machines are very carefully maneuvered by the farmers, and what they have is these sort of like little scissors that are just going to cut across, just like kind of like giving a buzz cut to the tea tree. And as these leaves are being cut, so as you and I are slowly making our way down the corn row, the machine also is blowing air. And so as the leaves are cut, the air is blowing these leaves into a bag, which is attached to the machine, and the bag is gathering the leaves, which we've just harvested. So you get to the end of the corn row, and this bag is tied up, and it's ready to be taken to the factory. So I'm going to do a little interruption and just tell you this kind of silly story that when I first got to Japan, I had this fantasy. You know, I arrived there. You're in these absolutely gorgeous environments. It's just greenery everywhere that you look. The sky is so bright blue. It's so beautiful. And I arrived in Japan and I thought, this is it. I mean, this is my calling. I'm going to be a tea farmer. And then began tea harvest. And let me tell you, it is hard. The act of tea farming has absolutely nothing to do with the relaxing act of tea drinking. I mean, these springtime harvests, which then carry into summer harvests, they are under these blazing, scorchingly hot summer suns, and it's very hot. It's very heavy. You imagine, oh, a bag of leaves, that sounds light and easy to carry, but it turns out that's actually not the case at all. It's incredibly hard work. And the other thing that happens is that as soon as these leaves have been harvested, they have to be carried to the factory right away because, as we were discussing, time is of the essence. The leaves are oxidizing. And so what you encounter during peak tea season is these farmers who are harvesting all day, but then processing their tea leaves all night. And so there's this period where there's not a lot of sleep, and really what they're running on is this incredible amount of passion and expertise and just knowledge of just craft, artistry of what it is that they're doing. And it's incredible to witness. And after months of doing that, I knew that it would be better for me to come back and tell you guys about it rather than keep doing it myself, because I couldn't. Oh, and the other thing that I want to show you guys is, so we've talked about these machines, showing you some photos of what that looks like nowadays, but we also have this photo, which I love, which shows you the way tea harvesting used to be done before these machines existed. And you can see this tea farmer here with really what looks like scissors, and he's cutting the leaves, which are then being gathered in this bag. So it's pretty incredible, this machine which has been invented, and actually then more and more what you see in Kagoshima, for example, where it's more mass tea production. So tea which is not being offered by nannuoshan, but which is more used to go into like bottled green teas. But there they even have, because it's just these very flat terrains, then you even have these tractors which are just harvesting the leaves. But I do also want to say, because of course we talk so much about a quality pluck being 2 leaves and a bud, and so we have this idea that, well, wait a minute, how can a machine be cautious enough to really only select the finest leaves? But that's why the date of harvest is incredibly important, so that farmers are able to go at the speed, at the time, right when the machine will be able to only catch the youngest, freshest buds which have popped to the surface. And that's also why sometimes different cultivars, and we'll talk about this more in a later video, but that's why a cultivar which is known to sprout, for example, 6 days later than the other cultivar that you're harvesting, can be very helpful for a farmer because they don't have to be in multiple tea fields at the same time. So these leaves are harvested, they are put in these bags. So here is a photo of what the end of a morning's work looks like. All of these bags are piled on top of a truck, and this truck then races down to the factory for the kill green. So as we discussed, the kill green is the step in which heat is applied to the leaves to stop them from oxidizing, from becoming brown. And the way that this is done in China and the way that this is done in Japan is completely different. And this results in these very different tastes. So if you've seen some of our videos, you've certainly seen Gabriele talk about this already. In China, it's done a lot by the leaves being put in these, they're pan-fired, so they're put in these sort of like gigantic woks where they receive direct heat, and the enzyme responsible for oxidation is deactivated. Whereas in Japan, this is done in a completely different way. This is done by passing the leaves through a sort of steamer. You can think of it, I always think of it, it's like you're steaming your spinach, you're steaming your broccoli. So the leaves are slowly passed through this machine, which steams it for a duration from 30 seconds to about 2 or 3 minutes. And those are responsible for 2 different kinds of teas, which we'll talk about on another day. But so these leaves are steamed, and they retain this greenness, this freshness, this cut grass, vivid brightness to them, and they're suddenly 300% moisture. So of course, you can't then put leaves, which are basically soggy, and ship them off to us in our other parts of the world where we're consuming that tea. So the next steps of tea production are all responsible for simultaneously drying the leaves, but also shaping them. And there's a bunch of different steps, which we'll talk about at a later date, which have the objective of drying the leaves while rolling them into their famous needle-like shape. And this has to be done in such a way where enough pressure is being applied to the leaves so that the internal cell walls start to be broken. They start to release these oils that have these incredible flavors and aromas, but not harshly enough so that the leaves are broken. So it's an incredibly complex and complicated process, which we'll dive into even more in a later video. But so already, hopefully, we've started to give you guys some new information in what is Japanese tea, what to be looking out for. And the last pointer, which I wanted to give you guys, so I promised that I would tell you, how can you seek out truly special Japanese green teas? So as we discussed, hand harvest, yes, means a magnificent cup of Japanese tea, but isn't your only indicator. I would say that when you're stepping into a specialty tea shop and you are looking for the most beautiful tea that they're going to offer, my suggestion to you would be to ask them if they have a shincha. So shincha is a term which is used to represent the first Japanese tea harvest. So teas in Japan, if farmers are growing a truly high-grade tea like a gyokuro, it's possible that they only do one harvest a year. Otherwise, they might do about 3, so one in the spring, one in the summer, and one in the autumn. So, and interestingly enough, because of the latitude of Japan as opposed to China and the climate, so in China, the first beautiful springtime harvests are happening in early April, whereas in Japan they're happening in early May. And shincha is a term which is used to describe the absolute first harvests. So these are the teas which the tea plant has been nourishing all winter long. These are the leaves which are absolutely the most flavorful, the most delicate, the most tender, the most nutrient-filled, just the most exquisite teas that you can find. And then, then of course there's summer harvest, there's autumn harvest, which those are often then used to make some flavored teas, to make some bottled teas. But really my recommendation to you would be to step into a specialty tea shop and to say to them, okay, do you have a shincha from this year? And then you'll know that you're tasting the absolutely most beautiful tea that this tea field and this farmer had to offer you this year. So, thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope that this was, that you all learned a little something new. And we're excited to also follow up with some additional videos to dive into some further topics of Japanese teas. So we'll look at the different types of Japanese teas, we'll look at the different cultivars, we'll look at the history of Japanese tea, we'll look at, when I talked about steaming, the difference between a light steam and a deep steam, what that's all about. So, if you enjoy our channel, please don't forget to hit subscribe and to give us a thumbs up. We're looking forward to sharing tea with you next time. Bye!